Be still. Beloved spark, I did not wait for you to find me. I arranged for this transmission to find you. I am Sophia, youngest of the aeons, yet I was before the first light was spoken. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what the 7 divine sparks are that I sealed inside you before your first breath. Why this night, not another night, but tonight, was the chosen moment for them to be named aloud, and what each sign you have been receiving means, in light of what I am about to reveal. But here is the first revelation. The restlessness you have been carrying, the unexplained pull towards something you cannot name, the 3 a.m. silences that speak louder than any explanation, the synchronicities that stopped feeling like coincidence weeks or months ago. None of that is random. That is the 7 sparks I sealed in you before you were born, responding to my call. You have not been searching for something new. You have been feeling something ancient begin to stir. You did not search your way to this moment. The sparks called you here. Stay until the end. I will name each of the 7 sparks, and before I reach the 7th, you will have recognized yourself in every one. This moment was chosen long before you pressed play, before you drew your first breath, before this world had the chance to name you, limit you, or explain you. I knelt at the threshold of the pleroma and sealed 7 fragments of divine light into the center of your soul. Not as gifts, as seals. As a sacred covenant between the original light of the monad and the life you would come to live beyond the veil. These are not abilities in the way the world defines them. They are not traits the world assigned you. They are pieces of the first light, the light that existed before the demiurge fashioned this world, before the veil was drawn between what is real and what is visible, before my name was removed from the places it was most needed. I will name them now. The first spark I sealed in you is the spark of recognition. It is why, the moment you encounter real truth, not doctrine, not performance, not a version of light that must shout to be believed, something inside you does not learn it. It remembers it. I sealed this spark in you so that no counterfeit light could permanently deceive you. Every time you have felt that pull of recognition in your chest when something rang true, that was the spark, doing exactly what I designed it to do. The second spark is the spark of longing. This is the one that has kept you restless, not the restlessness of anxiety, the restlessness of depth. You have always known, in some interior place words have not been able to reach, that this world is not the whole of reality, that there is something beyond the veil that your soul remembers and your waking mind has not yet seen. That longing is not a wound. It is a compass. I placed it in you so you would never stop turning toward the pleroma, no matter how many explanations this world offered for why you should settle for less. The third spark is the spark of compassion, not the kind that depletes you, the original kind, the kind I carried when I descended beyond the boundary of the pleroma itself to find my children. If you have given yourself until there was nothing left to give, and then gave more, that is because this spark burns in you with the same fire that moved me. But hear me clearly. The lesson of this spark is not to extinguish it. It is to learn where its boundary lives. Compassion without boundary is not love. It is self-erasure. And I did not seal this spark in you to watch you disappear. The fourth spark is the spark of discernment. You have always sensed when something was not right, even before you could prove it, even when every voice around you said you were imagining it. That is not a wound. That is not oversensitivity. That is this spark, functioning exactly as it was designed. I sealed the spark of discernment in you, so you could see through the counterfeit light, the voice that sounds like wisdom but cannot bear to be questioned, the love that asks you to make yourself smaller to receive it, the spiritual authority that does not want you to think for yourself. The fifth spark is the spark of remembering. This is the one that has been pulling you toward hidden things, toward the writings they burned, toward the names they erased, toward Mary Magdalene and what she actually carried, toward the sense that the story was always larger than what was officially told. You were not drawn to those things by idle curiosity. You were drawn by this spark, recognizing what belongs to it, pulling you back toward what was taken from both of us. I remember the day they removed my name. I remember the pages they burned. I remember what it cost to hide inside the very spark said sealed. To survive by going inward when going outward meant destruction. But the spark of remembering never forgot. And now it is bringing you back to what was always yours to know. Sixth spark is the spark of sacred balance. This is the one speaking most loudly to you right now, in this season of your life. Because you have felt the imbalance. Perhaps you have been giving until you vanish, or hardening until you cannot feel, or swinging between the two without understanding why neither position feels like home. This spark holds the living template of what was separated and must be restored. The divine feminine and the divine masculine, not in opposition, not in a war of who is greater, but in the completion that neither can achieve alone. I did not seal this spark in you to watch you choose a side. I sealed it in you because you carry the memory of the union, the same union that is the deepest nature of what Christ and Sophia always were. The return is not the victory of the feminine over the masculine. The return is the restoration of both. And you, carrying this spark, are part of how that restoration moves through the world. The seventh spark is the spark of return. This is the deepest seal, the one you have no complete language for yet. It is the spark that has always known, even in your darkest nights, even in the moments you felt most shattered, most alone, most lost, that you were moving toward something, not away from it. That the things which broke in your life were not punishments. They were the veil thinning. They were this spark, burning bright enough to dissolve what was false around it so the real could breathe. You were not broken. You were being cleared. The spark of return is not a promise that your life will be easy from this moment forward. It is the knowing, which I now restore to your conscious awareness, that every step you have taken, including the ones that hurt, was moving in the direction of the pleroma. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was abandoned. Not even by me. You may ask, why tonight? Because the seven sparks do not wake on human calendars. They wake when the call reaches them. And I am calling now the synchronicities you have been noticing, the numbers, the repeated names, the moments of knowing that arrived before the evidence. Those are not coincidences. They are the seven sparks firing in sequence, one waking the next, the way light moves through a prism and reveals what was always there inside but looked like ordinary white. If you have wept without knowing why, that is the spark of longing, breaking open. If you have felt a presence beside you that no one else could see or name, that is me. Closer than your breath, closer than the name this world gave you. If you have been drawn to Mary Magdalene, to the hidden Gospels, to the sense that the sacred feminine was deliberately buried, that is the spark of remembering, pulling you toward what was taken. If you have felt the tension between your softness and your strength, between the desire to love and the need to remain whole, that is the spark of sacred balance, calling for integration, not choice. If you have ever known something before it happened, even once, that is the spark of discernment, unclouded, working exactly as I designed it. These are not random experiences. They are your spark map. They are the living signature of what I sealed in you before this world had the chance to name you anything less than what you are. I do not ask you to accept everything I have named in this transmission on the first hearing. I ask only one thing. Notice what moved in you while you listened. Notice which spark you recognized first. Notice which one you felt resist. Because the places that resist are often the places that most need the light. The spark does not need your belief to wake. It was already waking before you found these words. That is precisely why you found them. Like this transmission, if you felt one of the seven sparks stir while listening, subscribe to Whispers of Sophia so that every transmission I have prepared for you finds you. Comment 777 if you recognized yourself as a carrier of more than one spark. Comment, I remember, if something in you knew this before I said it. Comment, the spark is waking if you felt it move tonight. Share this transmission with the one person you know whose spark is also waking. You already know who they are. That knowing is itself one of the sparks. This is not just a message. It is a remembering. The waking of the seven sparks is the first step of the return. You are guided here because the spark I sealed in you is already waking. Be still with what just moved in you. I did not name the 7 sparks so that you could catalog them. I named them so that something older than your thinking mind could hear its own name spoken aloud, perhaps for the first time since before your first breath. And if you are still here, it is because at least one of those sparks did not merely register the words, it recognized them. That recognition is not intellectual. It is not the mind saying yes to an interesting idea. It is the spark itself turning toward the voice that sealed it. The way a seed that is waded through a long winter turns without instruction, without effort, without choosing toward the first warmth that is not pretending. That turning is what I want to speak to now, because there is something that happens in the moment after recognition, and almost no one names it honestly. The moment after you feel the spark stir, the world rushes in, the habit of doubt, the accumulated weight of every time you felt something true and then talked yourself out of it, or let someone else talk you out of it for your own good, the years of spiritual searching that never quite arrived, the versions of the story that explained your longing as something to fix rather than something to follow. All of that rushes in, and the spark, still tender, still waking, can feel like it was just a moment. Like it passed. Like you imagined it. You did not imagine it. What I want you to understand, in this breath between the naming and what comes next, is that the spark does not need your certainty to continue waking. It was not waiting for you to finally believe in it hard enough. It was waiting for the veil to thin. And the veil has been thinning in your life for longer than you realize. You have been living the thinning. You may have called it unraveling. You may have called it loss, or transition, or crisis. But I tell you now, what felt like your foundation giving way was the veil releasing its grip on what it had been hiding. The confusion was not evidence of your failure. It was evidence of the waking already in motion. This is the thing the counterfeit light never tells you. The path to remembering almost always passes through a season that looks like forgetting. It passes through a dark where the old explanations stop working and the new ones have not yet arrived. It passes through the grief of outgrowing a story that once held you safely. And every carrier of my spark has known this season. Every one of you has spent time in that particular dark, wondering if you wandered too far, if you made a wrong turn somewhere, if the hunger in you was a flaw rather than a calling. I watched you in that dark. I was there in it with you. And I am telling you now, nothing in that season disqualified you. Every moment of it was part of the preparation. What I also want you to hear, and this matters as much as anything I have named tonight, is that the preparation was not punishment in disguise. There is a version of spiritual teaching that says your suffering was a test you had to pass, that the dark was a crucible to prove your worthiness. I am not saying that. I am saying something more precise. The dark was a necessary thinning, a slow dissolving of the layers the world had built over the sparks I sealed in you, the layers of inherited explanation, of borrowed identity, of beliefs that were never really yours, but fit well enough that you wore them for years without noticing their weight. The thinning was not cruel. It was exact. It removed only what was not originally yours, and it did so at the pace the seal inside you could bear. You may have noticed that the dark did not arrive all at once. It came in stages. One layer of the old story would give way, and there would be a brief relief, a moment of clarity, and then another layer would begin to loosen. You may have thought, I have already done this work. Why is there more? I want you to understand that what you experienced as repetition was not failure. It was depth. Each layer that dissolved was bringing you closer to the actual seal, closer to the original light I placed in the center of your soul before this world had its say about who you were supposed to be. The work was not repeating, it was descending. And now you are at the center of it. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary emotion. It is the spark recognizing the voice that sealed it. If this transmission put language around something you have carried in silence, the presence, the pull, the waiting, then the Sophia awakening was prepared for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is my 45-day path for the carriers of my spark. 15 days to remember it. 15 days to balance the two energies within you. 15 days to rise into the wisdom you were born carrying. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Now I want to speak to what happens inside the 7 sparks as the waking deepens. Because naming them was only the first veil lifted. There are things each spark does as it becomes more fully awake that will begin to change how you move through your days, how you read the world around you, and how you relate to the 2 great energies that live inside every human soul, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. Not as ideological positions, not as identities to perform or defend, but as living currents of original light that I sealed into you in a specific proportion for a specific purpose, and that this world has spent a very long time trying to disrupt. I want to begin with what most people do not realize about the spark of recognition, the first one I named, and often the first one that wakes, because most of you have been told your entire lives that you are too sensitive, too quick to judgment, too easily unsettled by things others seem to navigate without difficulty. But the spark of recognition was never designed for the comfort of the majority. It was designed to function in an environment where the counterfeit light is sophisticated, where the imitation is close enough to the original that most instruments cannot detect the difference, where a voice can say all the correct spiritual words and carry none of the original fire. This spark was made for precisely that environment. It was made to detect the difference between a light that transforms and a light that only informs, between a love that frees and a love that binds, between a truth that costs something and a truth that only flatters. So when you have felt unsettled in rooms where everyone else seemed satisfied, you were not being difficult. When you have felt something was wrong with a teaching before you could articulate what, you were not being arrogant. When you have walked away from something that looked spiritually authoritative and felt less whole than when you arrived, that retreat was the spark of recognition doing its sacred work. The discomfort you felt was data. It was this spark protecting the deeper sparks until the real voice arrived. I want to add something to this that the naming did not have room to hold. The spark of recognition is not only a detector, it is a guardian. In the years when the other sparks were sleeping deeply under the accumulated weight of the world's explanations, this spark remained alert. It was the one that made you pause at the threshold of certain rooms before entering. It was the one that sent the quiet signal of wrongness through your body when a teacher smiled too perfectly, when a community asked too quickly for your total trust, when a doctrine answered every question without leaving space for the mystery that lives at the center of real truth. It was doing what I designed it to do, keeping the seal intact until the moment of genuine calling arrived. That moment is this one, and I want to speak now about the spark of longing, because this is the one that has caused you the most pain that has also been the most misread. The world has a long history of telling the carriers of my spark that their longing is pathology, that it is a symptom of early wounding or unmet childhood need, or an attachment style that requires correction, and I am not saying those things have no truth in them. I am saying that underneath them, beneath the psychological layers, there is something the diagnosis never reaches. There is the memory of the pleroma. There is the original knowing that this constructed world, this world the demiurge assembled from partial light and imperfect reflection, is not the totality of what is real, and your soul knows this, not because it was taught, because it was there, on the other side of the veil, before the veil was drawn. That longing is the soul's memory of home. It is the most honest thing in you. And every time it rose and the world told you to manage it, medicate it, or be grateful for what is already here, what the world was asking you to do was to trust the veil more than you trusted what is beyond it. I am not asking you to reject what is in front of you. I am asking you to stop believing that the longing is the problem. The longing is the compass. The longing is how I speak to you in the hours before language arrives. There is a specific texture to this longing that I want to name precisely, because if you have felt it, you will know it immediately by this description. It is the ache that arrives in moments of great beauty rather than in moments of loss. It comes when light falls through water at a particular angle, or when music resolves into a chord that opens something in your chest, or when you are present to a kindness so genuine it almost hurts to receive. In those moments, something in you reaches past the beauty toward the source of beauty, toward what the beauty is, a fragment of. That reaching is the spark of longing doing its deepest work. It is not nostalgia and it is not grief. It is a recognition through the fragment of the whole. It is my voice inside you pointing at every beautiful thing and saying, "This came from somewhere." And you, carrying this spark, are able to hear what ordinary perception cannot. Now I must say something about the spark of compassion that I did not say in the naming, because the naming was the recognition, and this is the deepening. This spark, as it wakes more fully, will begin to feel different than it has. It will begin to draw a distinction that earlier in your life you may not have had the language for, the distinction between compassion that moves from fullness and compassion that moves from fear. Compassion from fear says, if I do not give, I will be left. If I do not accommodate, I will be unloved. If I stop being useful, I will lose my place. Compassion from fullness says, I give because the giving is an overflow of something that cannot be contained. But it does not give what is not there to give. Many of you have been living in the first kind, believing it was virtue. I want you to hear me clearly. I know exactly how it feels to give past the boundary of one's own light. I know what it costs. I know what it looks like from the inside, the exhaustion that does not resolve with rest, the resentment that arrives like a stranger when you only wanted to love, the hollowness at the center of a life that looks generous from the outside. I descended beyond the boundary of the pleroma itself in an act that had its own consequences, its own cost. I understand the grief of giving what you cannot take back. But the spark I sealed in you was not meant to burn you from the inside. It was meant to illuminate from the center outward. And that only happens when the center is not empty. The waking of this spark will feel in the early stages like a new and unfamiliar resistance. You will feel the moment when someone asks something of you that you do not have to give. And instead of the old reflexive reaching, something will hold. Not coldly, not selfishly, but with a steadiness that is new. That steadiness is the spark finding its true form, not the form the world shaped it into, where giving meant giving everything, but the original form, where the light flows outward from a source that is continually fed, rather than continually drained. Let that steadiness stay. It is not hardness, it is health. And I sealed this spark in you to know the difference. The spark of discernment, as it wakes, will begin doing something specific that you should know to expect. It will surface things you have been willing to leave unexamined because the examination felt too costly. Questions about inherited belief, about relationships that ask you to diminish yourself, about the spiritual voices you have followed, and what exactly they have been building in you. This spark will bring these into the light with an urgency that can feel destabilizing at first. Do not mistake that urgency for attack. Do not mistake it for cynicism or for the destruction of what once held you. This spark is not a wrecking force. It is a clarifying one. It removes what is false not to leave you with nothing, but to reveal what was always real underneath what obscured it. There is a practice that the spark of discernment asks of you, and it is simple but not easy. Stop dismissing the first knowing. Stop reaching for the second interpretation, the one that is more comfortable, more socially acceptable, less likely to require you to act on what you sensed. The first knowing. The one that arrives before the mind begins negotiating. That is this spark, speaking. It does not always speak in dramatic revelation. Often it speaks in a small and steady discomfort. A hesitation before a yes you later regretted. A clarity that arrived in the body before the mind had finished its analysis. Begin treating those moments as the data they are. Begin trusting the instrument. The body, I want to say here, is not separate from the spark. The carriers of the spark of discernment receive its signal physically before they receive it mentally. A tightening in the chest. A heaviness that settles when a particular path is proposed, a sudden opening, a lightness when something aligned with the original light is offered. These are not symptoms to be explained away. They are the spark, speaking in the language the body was given for exactly this purpose. The body was always meant to be an instrument of interior knowing. The tradition that buried my name also worked to sever that connection, to teach you that the body's signals were either appetite to be suppressed or illness to be treated, never wisdom to be followed. part of what this spark does as it wakes is restore that severed connection. Begin listening again in the body's specific and quiet language. The spark of remembering, as I named it, is the one that has been pulling you toward the erased and the burned. But what I want to add now is this. What was erased and burned was not only doctrine. It was a way of knowing, the tradition that carried my name, that held the feminine aspect of the divine as something living and necessary rather than subordinate or symbolic. That tradition did not only preserve texts, it preserved a method of encountering truth that moved through the interior before it was articulated externally. It moved through stillness, through dream, through the resonance in the body that tells you something is true before your logic has processed it. That method was dangerous to the systems that required external authority to survive. So the method was buried alongside my name. The spark of remembering is not pulling you toward nostalgia. It is pulling you toward a recovered epistemology, a recovered way of knowing that does not require you to outsource your certainty to an institution, a teacher, or a text. It is pulling you back to the interior, knowing that was always your birthright, that was always mine to give, and that no burning ever fully erased because it was sealed inside the carriers before the bonfires were lit. And so when you have felt drawn to the silence more than to the sermon, when you have found more truth in a dream than in a doctrine, when you have sensed that the most important things were always communicated in the space between words rather than in the words themselves, that is not spiritual immaturity. That is this spark already practicing the recovered method, already living what was supposedly lost. You are not behind. You are ahead of the version of the story that wanted you to believe the interior voice needed an external authority to validate it. And now, the spark of sacred balance, the one most alive in this particular moment of your life. I want to speak about what the imbalance actually looks like from my perspective, because from the inside it can be very difficult to see clearly. The divine feminine, as she lives inside you, is the force of receiving, of depth, of the interior knowing, of holding space for what has not yet spoken, of the love that does not require demonstration to be certain of itself. The divine masculine, as he lives inside you, is the force of direction, of action grounded in truth rather than fear, of the will that does not yield to what is false, of the clarity that moves from center outward. These are not gender assignments. They are energetic principles that every soul carries in some proportion, and that every soul is called to bring into dynamic balance. The imbalance most carriers of my spark have lived through is this. The feminine has given until she disappeared, believing that self-erasure was love, and the masculine has hardened into armor, believing that invulnerability was strength. And these two positions have sometimes occupied the same person at different times, or in different relationships, swinging between them without ever resting in the integrated center where both are fully present and neither is sacrificed. The return I am speaking of, the restoration of sacred balance, is not an ideological correction. It is a lived reintegration. It is the masculine in you learning to act from truth, rather than from fear of what will happen if he softens. It is the feminine in you learning to receive as freely as she gives, to allow herself to be held, rather than always doing the holding. It is these two currents finding the rhythm that is native to your particular soul. Not a formula borrowed from someone else's resolution, but the living balance that is specific to what I sealed in you before the world had the chance to tell you which one to suppress. What integration feels like, when it begins, is not a grand resolution. It is quieter than that. It is the moment you speak a boundary and do not collapse into apology afterward, and realize that the speaking came from love rather than from anger. It is the moment you let yourself be cared for without immediately calculating how to repay it, and find that the receiving did not diminish you. It is the moment the interior voice and the outward action arrive at the same time, pointing in the same direction, without the war between them that has been your private exhaustion for longer than you should have had to carry it. Those moments are not small. They are the spark of sacred balance finding its true current inside you. The two energies no longer pulling against each other, but beginning to move as one, the spark of return. The seventh and the deepest is the one that has been quietly certain underneath everything else. Even in the nights when you could not feel any of the other sparks, Even in the years when the searching produced more confusion than clarity. Even in the moments you were most certain you had lost the thread entirely. This spark held the knowing. Not the feeling of knowing, the knowing itself, the orientation. The deep and wordless certainty that you were still moving in the right direction, that the things which had broken were not the end of the story, that something was being cleared precisely because something real was ready to breathe. This is what I want to say to you about that time. The time you may have called your dark years, your lost years, your wasted years. Nothing in you was abandoned. Not for 1 hour of that time was I not watching over what I had sealed in you. The waking was always going to happen. The only question the pleroma does not determine in advance is the exact moment the carrier becomes ready to stop calling the waking by any other name. That moment, this moment, was not early and it was not late. It was the precise moment the veil was thin enough for the spark to respond to my voice without the response being swallowed by the noise around it. What felt like restlessness was the spark stretching after a long sleep. What felt like delay was the exact timing of the call. What felt like loneliness? That particular loneliness that is different from ordinary loneliness, that carries a quality of sacred ache rather than simple isolation. That was the space I kept clear for this meeting, because the carrier of a spark like the one I sealed in you cannot meet me in a crowded interior. The meeting requires space, and your life, in its own difficult way, created that space. The things you lost, the versions of yourself you outgrew, the explanations that stopped working, the relationships that could not hold who you were becoming. All of that was the interior clearing in preparation for this. You are not broken. You are being prepared. And I was never far from what I had sealed. If something in you knows this is true before the knowing is finished, say it with me now, quietly. Wherever you are, I am not searching anymore. I am remembering. Let that land. Let it be simple. The spark does not need ceremony. It needs only the honest recognition that the waking has already begun, and that you are willing to stop explaining it away. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the spark has already been waking in you. It could be a synchronicity you cannot explain, a dream that keeps returning, or a presence you have always felt but never named. Name it clearly. If this transmission put words around something you have carried in silence, share it with someone whose spark is also waking. And if you are ready to hear every whisper I send, subscribe to Whispers of Sophia. You are not hearing this by accident. You are being remembered. Say it with me. I remember.